Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Diabetes Tour Guide. My name is Andy, and I'm your host, and your driver, and your fellow journeyman along the tour of diabetes. I've lived with type 1 diabetes for almost 19 years, or almost going on 20 years now. And I've practiced as a physician assistant for nearly 5 years. I know diabetes is not one size fits all, neither is medicine, and there's a lot to learn about it and a lot of questions to ask. And so I wanted to use this episode as actually, we're going to title it To the Parents, or Questions Along the Way. Sometimes when you have a newly diagnosed child or kid or adolescent with diabetes, you almost want to do too much or too little. There's a habit to say, I need to take this from them or I need to do this for them. And I think there's a healthy medium between. But I do get specific questions from parents, and I thought it'd be fun too to address these, give you my opinion, a recommendation, not a medical advice, but just a recommendation, especially from a kid who has had diabetes and now as a practitioner who also still has diabetes 20 years later. And to give you a little bit of guidance in these. As always, please click subscribe, like, put questions or comments in this segment too, and I will address these in future episodes, and we'll call it the questions episode. So the questions hopefully going to be in the back of the green screen for you. If not, just remember them. I'll say them out loud. Number 1. Should my child, recently diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, be involved in physical activities, or should it be limited? Let's say sports. Yes, they should always be involved. My answer for this was absolutely do not take them out of sports, do not take them out of ballet, do not take them out of dance, do not take them out of band. Put them in activities, put them in more activities. Limitations, I just think that if you teach that child that they need to be limited, they'll always be limited. And diabetes does not limit us. We just had a professional actor on our interview podcast for the Diabetes Tour Guide. We've had a mom of 4 on the Diabetes Tour Guide being interviewed who's lived with diabetes for a long time. We had a bodybuilder, nutritionist, nutrition coach, physical trainer who's in rip-roaring shape on the podcast. He is not limited by type 1 diabetes, and neither should your child. You should do some things to help prepare them and let them know that they will get low or they will get high on the basketball court, on stage, in the training room. That we want to actually teach them how to deal with lows and highs, not to avoid the lows and highs, because they're going to happen. Diabetes is not perfect. Just expect that they're going to happen. It's better to give them the tools to be able to deal with the activity rather than take the activity away. We want that child, that patient, that adolescent to feel as normal and involved as possible and to not feel limitless. Now, we don't want them to be reckless. There's a difference between limitless and reckless. Limitless means I'm involved in any activity I want to pursue. Physical activity is actually really great for your blood sugar. I want to prepare for the lows by having all the tools with me. Juice box, glucose tabs, honey, those stinger bars or stinger gels, and something too for highs, a lot of water, extra insulin, and making sure that things don't just melt in the sun, making sure that they have coolers or ice packs so you can make that fun. Reckless would be go out and do it, don't check your blood sugar, and have fun. We want to have that nice happy medium. That would be my recommendation. Number 2. How involved should I be as a parent in my child's care with type 1 diabetes? Yikes. This is a fully loaded question. I think there's, again, limitless and reckless. There is a over-involved helicopter and an under-involved, I don't care what my kid does. I think this is probably more general in life. You can actually approach it the way you'd approach anything with a kid, is that you want to give healthy guardrails, but you want to let the kid drive the car. The kid's never going to learn to drive if you do not put them in the driver's seat. But you also don't want to put a kid in a driver's seat without a seatbelt and without training of how to drive the car and not putting them on safe roads to begin with. So I'd say be involved, be motivating, be kind, be gentle. I would avoid using words like your blood sugars are bad or what did you do? It's so easy to blame the kid or to blame the adolescent or the patient with diabetes for sugars that are out of range or in range. And I would start using habits of that you have diabetes, not you are a diabetic or I have a diabetic child. We don't want to identify with it. We want it to be an identifier. being involved to let them know that, hey, they need to know the severities and the realities that type 1 diabetes out of hand can have negative consequences in the future. And I think there's a healthy balance to slowly approach that. But I'm not one for the death sentence. I've never done that with patients either. I don't like it. But there's a nice, healthy way to tell the severity of what could happen. And two, of course, death can happen. That's what's not beat around the bush. Diabetes can kill people, and it did 100 years ago as a death sentence. And now it's not. So I think there's a healthy way to be involved without being over-involved. So encouragements would be language, especially when you're talking about diabetes, and not having them take ownership over the maintenance of diabetes, but not of diabetes itself. To kind of nuance that, saying blood sugars are in range and out of range, not they're good or bad. Definitely not saying your blood sugars are bad, or your blood sugars, you can say your blood sugars are good if you want, but I'd avoid saying anything with ownership of that. Blood sugars are in range, out of range. A1C is not in the range that we want it. How do we get that down? Our time in range is not where we want it. How do we get that down? Or how do we get that up for time in range? I would also I'd be cognizant of what their signs and symptoms are of low blood sugars and have them be very vocal about when they're feeling those things. If a kid is not telling you something and they tell you they feel fine, believe them. Give them some credit for how they feel. Two, you can also be connected within their CGMs. There's something called Night Guard or Night Owl, and there's Dexcom G6 or G7 will allow you to share data, so you can get alerts too, and kind of see what your kid does on his or her own. See if they can help manage that. I sometimes have parents too involved where the kid goes to college and doesn't know how to deal with their diabetes. So you want them to think of it as the analogy of, I want to teach my kid how to drive so that for the rest of their lives they can drive and I'm not worried about them traveling overseas with diabetes like I do. If you have more questions or specific ways, please contact us and we'll get back to you on that or address it in future episodes. Last question. Should I get my child with diabetes a diabetes dog? No. I don't like it. I really don't. I would tell you if I did, and I'd be honest because I love dogs. I have one, and my sister and I, we share our dogs. So we have two. We love our dogs. Dogs, even two that aren't trained for diabetes, can kind of tell when sugars are on or off. The purpose of a diabetes alert dog is to alert the patient with diabetes if their blood sugar is low or high, because there's some sort of unawareness with glycemia, whether it be high or low. So a dog can sniff you. It's basically by smell, because sugar has a smell, and they'll say, hey, low or high. The thing I don't like about it for having it with a kid is that dog is very highly trained, very expensive, highly trained, and they can't be touched by other people. They're not play dogs. They're service animals. And so I feel like that kid, you're not even, I think, allowed to look at the dog. There was one in high school that we had a student who had a diabetes dog, and it's an ostracizing tool, especially now that we have CGMs, Dexcoms, Freestyles, Eversense, where you can really tell your blood sugar and it'll alert you. I'm not a huge fan of the dogs because I feel that with diabetes, you want to be incorporated into the community, and that's a little bit ostracizing. If your child really just wants one because they think it's the coolest thing ever, and then it's not a bad thing. Those dogs are amazing dogs. I just think that I'd really weigh the pros and cons. And if it were me getting it for my child, absolutely not. So thank you so much for these questions. Please submit more in the comment sections. Like, subscribe, share with other people who might have these similar questions too, or to provide recommendations. I learn more from my patients than I'll ever learn from textbooks, so I know I will learn from you. Thank you again for joining us on the Diabetes Tour Guide, and I hope to see you on future stops along the way. Have fun, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.